All right, let's go across to our correspondent Sumit Chaturvedi, who's in conversation with Mr. Anand Mahindra.
So first of all, we would like to know from your side, what kind of JV this is with Rafael and how will it benefit you?
The Rafael JV is with this Israeli company, a sizable Israeli company, roughly about $2 billion. What we are very excited about is that this is about high-tech systems. You are photographing me in front of a gigantic piece of hardware, and that's what is conjured up when people think of defense. They think of guns, they think of heavy trucks. Increasingly though, the most important element of defense expenditure is going to be in systems. What makes this hardware intelligent? How high-tech are our systems? That is going to make the difference between victory or loss in battles of the future. And I think that's where India needs to make investments. So this JV really is towards that objective. Rafael brings in very, very advanced systems of surveillance, of what they call response. And so we are, first of all, with Rafael, going to be bringing their technology to bear on the FICV bid. If we are fortunate enough to be chosen for that procurement, then Rafael will provide the weaponry, the response mechanisms on that system. So I think it's a beginning of something which is going to be much larger.
What kind of investment is going to put into it, and what kind of revenue contribution it will give to you in the next 5 and 10 years?
We are beginning with a 100 crore investment, which will be in the ratio of the equity ownership, which, as you know, under current regulations is 74:26. And as we go along, we are looking at a business of roughly $500 million over 10 years, which works out to about 50 million a year. However, if we do win in the FICV bid, we see that this revenue could climb to $1 billion over the next 10 years.
And talking about, you just spoke about certain things that we need more transparency in defense procurement. What kind of transparency you need? What kind of change you want?
I think by transparency, what I mean is the systems know-how, that the processes, the very transparent processes that exist in the best private sector companies for any kind of procurement process. What people want to know is, why are we buying something? What is its cost? What exactly was its competition? What are its technological features and why was it chosen? And I believe there is no harm in enunciating and being transparent about that, which is what we will do in all our ventures for defense production. And that's why I believe this is the real time for the government to make good its promise on involving the private sector to a much greater degree in defense procurement. If they do, then what you will immediately get is transparency and technology, which, as you see, is a hallmark of the joint ventures that we announced today.
In a big move, can middlemen be allowed in India? In certain countries, they are legal. So do you think there can be role for middlemen in India also?
You know, I don't want to comment on those because those are not important. Whatever the value chain that you have, the word middleman is a bad word. In many areas, the polite word is intermediaries. If there is value in intermediation, terrific, that's fine. To me, that's not the point. The point is transparency. It's not whether you have an intermediary or don't have one. The question is, how transparent are we about our processes?
You also said that as an Indian, it worries you about certain reports that 90% of the Indian Air Force equipment is obsolete. That worries you as an Indian. We're not prepared. We're not safe enough.
Well, let me put it this way. Somebody asked me, am I worried about that particular report? And I didn't want to comment on that report because, frankly, that report I have no knowledge to. I'm not privy to that. Am I worried about whether we are adequately prepared? Yes, of course. I do believe, very frankly, that I think our systems and our hardware needs to be upgraded dramatically. And I think we have fallen behind on many schedules in all the armed forces. And yes, as an Indian, I'm worried.
FDI in defense, you have always batted for more than 26%. It's not happening now. You still demand more.
We batted right from the beginning of our JV with BAE. We batted very strongly that 49% was certainly valid and justified. And we continue to bat and we continue to hope.
There's good news that concept vehicles they have not succeeded in their arbitration. Now, when can we see you going into US market? It's a much, like we were waiting for that since a long time. And when can you now go to US market?
You know, the US market is always going to be on our radar screen. And the only problem is that right now we need to figure out how this winds down. Yes, we've had some significant victories in the arbitration. We are very, very pleased and relieved that our stand has been vindicated. But I think it's a little premature as yet, to comment on what the aftermath of that will be. But certainly, we'll be very open and transparent about it when we make our plans.
It was public that you were bidding for Saab. Are you still in the race for Saab or out of the race?
I don't think anything was public, and our stand has always been the very cliched comment that we don't comment on speculation.
One last thing from you before you go, sir. You opted out of Air India at a very right time, sir. So it's still the problem is still not there. What will you have to say? What is the way forward for Air India? What do you have to say about Air India now?
No, I didn't opt out at any right time. I opted out because we have very big plans in aerospace, and so I felt it a conflict of interest, and in upholding the same principles of ethics and transparency is why I left. And I think it would be improper for me to comment because the board is working on a transaction, and given that I was privy to information while I was there, it would be highly inappropriate for me to comment.